Hey, it's Juck.
And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback.
The truth is, Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those.
You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country.
And welcome into Juckonbucks on a Wednesday. I'm looking at that intro. I'm so embarrassed by it every day. I made it really early on in the show. I've got to get a new intro spliced together, but it's just a pain. I'm not good at that stuff. Anyway, good morning, everybody. Appreciate y'all so much for joining me on a Wednesday morning. And a welcome to all of our new listeners. Been a big influx lately. What I've noticed in my short time doing this, I think I'm on like 9 months or so, is whenever there is some trepidation in Ohio State world, whether it's a loss or whether it's a game where maybe the Buckeyes don't perform as well as expected, a big injury, there's a big bump. So like everybody seems to be gravitated more towards maybe not so good news than really great news. It's just something I've noticed throughout my time doing this, which again, not been so long, just my observation, but a big influx lately. So welcome to all of the new folks to Juckeye Studios, Northeast Ohio. This is Juckonbucks, and I'm Juck. Nice to meet you. And I got a question for you in the chat, in the comments, and I'm going to be reading some of these answers on tomorrow's show. I told you yesterday about my all-time program rankings, and you know if you're an Ohio State fan, if you're not, this is true. Ohio State is the most consistently winning program in the history of college football. The only one who's never had a down period. And we're talking about pressure, the head coach of the football team, how much different he looks in year 6 than when he was first hired. And that's kind of why I put on the thumbnail of this video a picture of him in year 1. Almost looks like, you talk about the president, how a president ages in those 4 years. The Ohio State coaching position kind of does that to people. And I got a refrain from a common refrain from an Oregon fan yesterday that we are crazy as Ohio State fans, a little too demanding. And my question is, I fully admit that, right? My question is it detrimental to us or is it helpful? I think we can all admit that we are a little more demanding and crazy, however you want to characterize it, than most fan bases. Is it helpful? Does it hurt? Has it helped create an environment where slipping is absolutely unacceptable? Has it helped create an environment where only the best and most confident will come to Ohio State to become a coach, to become a player? Or has it ultimately maybe hurt us some? Does it scare people away, push people away? It's an interesting conversation, I think, because at times like this, it really stands out when you are coming off a win where your team drives down, gets it done offensively, you stand up defensively, and a lot of us have just been very irritated all week, and other fan bases look at that and say, what in the hell is wrong with these people? So I get it. I mean, all I can say is I was born into it. I don't know what else to be, but it is, it's a thought. Maybe it's not a good thing. Maybe it's not. Dylan will join us today. I'm going to ask him the question, but I want to hear some of your answers, and we'll pull some of those up tomorrow. We got one from Emily, and I already knew where she stood. I already knew where Emily stood before I even asked the question. It's not helpful. It hurts. It makes the season not fun, which is so sad. Emily gets very bothered by negativity. She does not want to hear it, and I understand. I totally understand. And then Sue says, I think putting the coach and team under this much pressure makes it more likely that they'll choke. I noticed there is a divide, I think, in this question between men and women. A lot of times view this differently because, two of our female listeners saying the same thing. My mom said the same thing. My wife says the same thing. Most of the guys say, no, you need to keep the heat on them. I don't know. Ultimately, I don't know. I think there's pluses and minuses to both, but I know nothing's changing, right? Like that I know. Like this is who we are, as a fan base, and that's just what it is. But big topic of discussion this week, as it is Penn State week, is who is under the most pressure, Ryan Day or James Franklin, Ohio State or Penn State, and most people are saying Ohio State. And you can certainly see the argument for it. Feels like Ohio State is in some trouble right now. Things might be slipping away. Ryan Day's 2-7 in top 5 matchups. They need to win this game at Penn State to stay in the Big Ten championship race. If they lose or have a lackluster performance, if they lose this game at Penn State, you'll be looking at 3 games in the middle of the season in Oregon, Nebraska, and Penn State, which was you had that 4-game stretch that was going to make or break the season, and you'll have had 2 losses and 1 pretty poor performance to Nebraska that you eked out. And that would be a real bad sign heading into what is now another huge game with Indiana. So a ton of pressure on the Buckeyes this Saturday to get the W. But a whole lot of people talking about Penn State's going to be able to play free and easy. I'm not so sure. Penn State has really cruised to this point relatively easily. They've only had to play one ranked team in Illinois. They got them at home. They had the one tough game out at USC, and USC's 2-4 in the Big Ten. Ohio State's going to be the only other ranked team they play. They're definitely going to cruise to the playoffs this year, even with a loss this Saturday. But there is the James Franklin element here. This guy's 1-9 against Ohio State. You think he's not under pressure? 3-17 in the top 10. If he loses this year, when everybody thinks in Penn State Nation that they've got Ohio State on the ropes, the noise is going to get so loud from the Penn State faithful that this guy is just simply incapable. He's never going to change. They're never going to get better. And I think this is being downplayed when people discuss the pressure, who's under the most. I think it's pretty damn close, but everybody's saying Ohio State. I'm not so sure. Talking about Penn State playing free and loose, nothing to lose. I could see it happening. They kind of play like that already with their offensive coordinator, Andy Kolenicki. This guy's just, he draws up plays and calls football games like I don't know, like you would expect a teenage kid in Madden. The guy's just wild. Everything's on the table. Everything. But we do got our buddy Dylan coming on today. And depending on how long you've been listening to me, you may or not have figured out that I'm an emotional guy, susceptible to big swings up and down. And sometimes when something big happens, I'm very reactionary. And then the next day, I've gathered my thoughts. I've calmed down. I'm singing a different tune. In the post-game show after Nebraska, I was fairly disappointed, not by the result of the game. The result is we won, but by 2 main things. One is, as we sit now this far into the season, I feel a very big lack of juice, lack of energy. And that surprises me from this team that is a cast of characters that came back foregone. They decided we're not going to go to the NFL. We're going to come back, accomplish our goals. And I just hearing that and how excited we all were when that happened, I expected just the feel more hair on fire, like to get this done. And I guess I just don't feel that. I don't see it on the field. And it's disappointing. It's concerning. It's just concerning projecting forward to me. The second thing is what I thought were quite a few puzzling coaching decisions in that game. And again, if it's just a one-off, it doesn't matter. Do any of those decisions project forward to how they're planning on doing things moving forward? So yesterday, when I found out that we were going to get to hear from both coordinators and Ryan Day, I was pretty excited that hoping I was going to get some answers to some of the questions that I had. And you never know, depending on the mood of the staff, you can come out of these things feeling great. It was just a one-off. There's no reason to be concerned about this or that. Or they'll give you nothing and you might come out with more questions than what you had going in. I was hoping for a staff who was confident, excited for a top 5 matchup Saturday. So let's go over what happened. Where do we stand? Maybe some hope of what we can expect for this showdown at Happy Valley. a game that if the Buckeyes lose, they will not have the opportunity to beat Indiana and Michigan and get a rematch with Oregon in the Big Ten championship. A game that if the Buckeyes win, they are right where many of us thought they would be at this point in the season, which is maybe you go out to Eugene, Oregon and lose, but you get to the Big Ten championship, you beat them there. They're right there. They're right where so many of us thought they would be. Now, I thought they'd get a small win out at Oregon. They got a small loss. It was never going to be devastating to me. They definitely represented, showed they belonged for sure on the field in the toughest environment in sports. They head into another one this Saturday. But Wednesdays, we have our buddy Dylan on, and Dylan joined me for that post-game show. And it was Dylan's question in Tuesday's press conference that solicited the biggest reaction from people, the majority of the fans watching it anyway. And it was kind of the talk on Twitter yesterday, and we'll get to that. But let's bring up our buddy Dylan Davis. Dylan.
How we doing?
Good morning, buddy. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Dylan, I put together some numbers yesterday, and one of the things that it was asked several times in several different ways yesterday at the press conference, but I went through every game, passing attempts versus rushing attempts, and averaged those out for the season, excluding the Nebraska game. The goal generally for them is they want to be roughly 50-50, which is kind of what it usually settles in. And you and I, with this offense, when we talked at the beginning of the season, wanted to see one more like 2019, which was a little more run heavy. I think it was closer to 60%, which was really cool. It was awesome to watch. Everybody loved it. If you were to guess, excluding the Nebraska game, what they're at about right now, 50-50, 48-52, what would you say?
I'd say 58-42.
So currently, excluding the Nebraska game, they're at 48% pass, 52% run. So extremely balanced up until the Nebraska game.
Yeah.
Then we get to the Nebraska game, and you're running the ball for 2.2 yards a carry, or it was less than 2.5. I've seen varying stats here, but less than 2.5 yards a carry. A lot of them are just getting stonewalled right off the rip. They can't even get them going. You got offensive linemen going the wrong way on counters. I mean, it was disaster of a performance, not just left tackle. 66% runs. And I find that puzzling. That was one of the things that I came away from thinking, like, there's got to be some kind of explanation. So in Tuesday's presser, Ryan Day continually referenced trying to establish the run, and you're going to find no bigger fan of hard-nosed running football than me. But where I was confused and potentially concerned moving forward was this maybe something to – so Zen, very bad pass blocking, pretty solid run blocking. He's not bad. Donovan Jackson also, if he comes in, he is a better pass blocker than a better run blocker than a pass blocker. Do you think they might be trying to disguise some of that or keep those dropbacks to a minimum with these runs? It just didn't make sense. He didn't really answer the question.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. It didn't sound to me, I didn't get the idea that, Ryan Day really had a clear answer to like what they need to do or what they want to do offensively. So many times week after week we get these, this talk from the coaches about, it's obviously game plan specific and they'll tailor that to, the opponent that week. But I don't, they're not going to make any declaration like, hey, yeah, we don't think we can really, protect the quarterback. So we're not going to throw the ball as much, or we can't throw the ball as much, anything like that. And nor do I believe that they think that. I'm not entirely sure on that. Obviously moving forward, I don't expect Ohio State to be a team that can run the football with any great success. So, maybe the most concerning thing to me was yesterday was that, Ryan mentioned that, run, pass, run, doesn't matter. The ultimate goal is to move the football and they want to be balanced. But I don't think that this is a team that's going to be able to run the football. So if they're not willing to, we kind of just scoffed at the notion of throwing to control the game or throwing to, to try to run the ball. And that was concerning to me because I don't think it's a team that is going to be able to run the ball with a whole lot of success moving forward, but it doesn't sound like they're going to ever embrace the idea of just, throwing their way to wins or, at least in theory.
He did seem to scoff at that question. He seemed very irritated by the line of questioning, to be quite honest, about that what I felt, what everybody was getting at was, why did you run the ball so much more? And establishing the run is one thing that, yes, absolutely, you want to do that, but clearly when it's not working, you don't want to do it. You're running twice as much as you usually do. That's just what it doesn't add up to me. And my hope was I would come out of this with, okay, whatever, it was a one-off, and we're not going to keep banging our head against the wall. Yes, you want to establish the run, you want to stay balanced for sure. But it wasn't just the left tackle position. The right guard position was very poor. The entire line played terrible. Penn State, obviously a pretty damn good defense. You don't think they're going to be able to run too well on Saturday is how I'm feeling.
No, I mean, I just don't see any way. I mean, look, going back to our, my comments on the show with you following the Nebraska game and that post game, my thoughts on the offensive line and the status of this Ohio State football team moving forward are very clear. And no part of me believes that I just can't get to a point where I think Ohio State's going to go to State College on Saturday and all of a sudden that offensive line plays really well and they run for 200 yards and throw for 225 yards, 250 yards and, put up 31 points and win the football game. I just don't believe that at all. I just don't. So, I'm happy to be wrong, but that's just not my belief in that offensive line doesn't exist.
You're going to be wrong, Dylan.
All right. Well,
you're going to be wrong. Now, a lot of questions about who's going to play where on the offensive line.
Yeah.
Ryan Day was asked about Zen. Would he be available? Would he be available to play this week with the injury? He said he's not sure. He went. I'll play the clip here. His answer to that.
Around this week, do you spend more time with the offense?
Yes.
And you had said with Zen that we'll see how he works through this week. Have you gotten the diagnosis on him? Is there a chance he could play this week?
We'll look at it again today and see where he's at. I think there is a chance, but we'll look at it today and get an update for you later in the week.
Tony Herman, Buckeye Huddle.
So if Zen can't go, is he then your starter at left tackle?
If he could go, he would be, yeah.
Okay, so that was like, what? Kind of blew me away. Later on, he was asked kind of an "are you sure" kind of question, and then his answer was, "we'll evaluate it." I don't think he really. I think this is a little bit of gamesmanship here. Somewhat conflicting answers, but I was very surprised to hear him say that. Do you think Zen will be healthy on Saturday? And if he is, do you think he'll be starting?
No, I don't. Well, I have no inside information on Zen's status right now or how he practiced yesterday. Tonight, as I've mentioned before, tonight we have our player interviews and we get our lightning round with Ryan Day, and it's always the best time for injury news because they've had their two biggest days of practice. So we'll have a really good or a better idea anyways of how guys are shaping up for Saturday tonight. So we'll see about that. If I had to guess, right now, I'm going to say no. I can't imagine Zen the way. Again, I was standing where he walked off the field at the way he was laboring under getting that help walking off the field. I would be surprised if he'd be ready to go next week. And I also would be surprised, even though nothing about this situation should surprise me because it's wild. But I would be surprised if Ryan Day and Chip Kelly and Justin Fry would be willing to put Zen in there if he's anything less than 100%, knowing how bad he struggled in the first place already. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say no way they would play that guy at 90% because it already blows my mind that that's the best option that they have, or they feel that's the best option they have, and surely that can't be the best option they have at 90% as well. For as bad as it was. So I'm going to say no. I don't think it would be healthy enough to play, and I don't think he does play. But that's a gut thing, and it has nothing to do with anything that I know or just how I feel about the status of Zen. And hopefully we'll find more about that tonight. So
he did confirm that Donovan Jackson had been getting reps at left tackle prior to this happening, so that they had foreseen potentially in this situation what are we going to do. And they had been repping him out there. That makes me feel somewhat better.
One thing I will say, and regardless, if Zen is healthy, like I know Ryan Day tried to kind of like walk it back and say, well, we'll still evaluate it this week. I found that to be complete crap. Like one thing I did take away, and I firmly believe, is if Zen is healthy, like Ryan Day believes, right? Zen's going to play if he's healthy. If he's capable of going out there, he's going to play.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get out of you. You believe that?
Sorry, I don't believe one bit. Ryan at the end saying, we'll evaluate it this week. The way he matter-of-factly said that earlier in the press conference told me everything I need to know. Like Zen is their guy at left tackle. If he's healthy enough to go and they feel good about himself, not just healthy enough to go. I don't mean that he can physically walk onto the field. If he's healthy enough where they feel good about his health, he's their guy. say what you want about that. I certainly have plenty to say about that. I think a lot of people do, but he's their guy. I definitely believe that. I don't believe, Ryan, for a second that they're still evaluating it this week. Like, frankly, they don't have enough time to evaluate it. Like, it's time to go. You got to have somebody in there who knows that they're going to play and what they're up against and roll with it. So, and Zen's their guy in that. Ryan said as much, and I don't care what he did say after the fact later on in the press conference. Ryan said that, and that's what I'm going with. So.
Okay. I'm curious as to, we talked about a lot of different offensive linemen yesterday. Why did Tegra's name never get brought up? We talk about Tegra. Obviously, he is the guy that has the best size for this position, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about disrupting or wanting to disrupt the chemistry the least, you've already got Austin still splitting snaps with him at right guard.
Yeah.
So you pop Austin in there and move Zen to left tackle. It seems to me like as minimal, stress on chemistry and everything else as just putting Zen in there. And I just can't believe Zen would be better than Tegra at that position. But I haven't heard his name brought up at all. Is it something that did I miss it? Has anybody brought up Tegra? We know that they said they wanted to keep repping him at guard so that he would be really good at one position instead of, just good at both, which I thought, that's a good plan in most instances. I like that. Not when you're really low on depth. At tackle probably wasn't a good plan, and I said it at the time. It's not a hindsight thing. But here we are. But nobody's talking about Tegra. It seems to me like that would be a good, at least thought, road to go down.
I think what you just said is everything. I just think that they don't want to overwhelm him. I just don't think he's ready to play tackle. I think from a physical frame standpoint, you're absolutely right, and it made a lot of sense. I know, in the days after Josh Simmons, when he went down in the Oregon game, people started speculating what the offensive line could look like, and that was, one of the obvious things you throw out there. Well, put Tager at tackle. You already have Austin Searveld, who's gotten experience at that right guard spot, and then boom, that solves your, I don't say log jam, or your rotation at right guard. And also, you have a guy who, from a physical standpoint, looks like he's ready to go play tackle at a high level in Division I college football. So, but I just don't think that, I don't think Tager's capable of going and playing the position. I think that's probably the biggest reason why. I just don't think he's prepared to go play tackle. And, it took a little while for Tager to even get ready to, where they felt good about putting him on the field at guard, and they had confidence in him. So I just don't think that he's, capable of playing tackle. Now, I could be totally wrong about that, but it just seems like such an obvious fix, quote unquote, fix to their offensive line issues that, if they didn't do that, or it hasn't even been talked about, then it just seems very clear to me that they just don't feel like Tager could go play tackle right now, and then they would, and then feel good about it. So that's the vibe I get. You haven't missed anything. Nobody's asked about it.
Okay.
So yeah,
he did let us in on why Luke Montgomery was the first man up at left guard instead of Austin Searveld, who had been coming in and playing during that game. He played 10 snaps at right guard. And I was pretty surprised when you saw Luke. Not that I was upset about it. I would like to see Luke get some more run. I would like to see what Luke's got out there. But essentially, it was just he was the man on the two deep at left guard for the game, and there wasn't much thought, I don't think, after that. But it was a bit confusing. After the Oregon game, Ryan Day said he was going to spend some more time with the defense, and he seemed really happy about the defensive performance. Said they played with more precision. They played with better pad level. Everything about it was crisper. They got lined up faster. I loved hearing all that. I loved seeing how excited he was about that. That's the feeling I had about the defense as well. How did you feel about the overall defensive performance compared to Oregon?
Yeah, we talked about it on Sunday, and I made that same comment that we were told that it was going to look different, that it needed to look different, and it did look different. And for that, I was at least pleased that was the case, because as we know, too many times in this program, we're told a lot of things that will change, or they're going to pivot to, or that you can see more of, and it just doesn't come to fruition. So I was pleased with the fact that they said it would look different, that it needed to look different, that they acknowledged those issues, and then it did look different. Jim Knowles said later on in that yesterday that dialing up additional pressures was the number one focus for them, in the weeks since that Oregon loss. And they did that. They brought a few different looks. So, all in all, it looked different because it needed to look different, and they played well. So, I was pleased with the defensive effort. It wasn't flawless. It wasn't perfect. But overall, I was pleased with the defensive effort. ultimately it comes down to we'll see what they do on Saturday. And obviously there's some challenges. We don't know quarterback wise what's going to happen with Penn State, and it's a little bit different there. But I was pleased with Saturday, but I don't care. Go win the game on Saturday. This Saturday, go win at Penn State. And frankly, I believe that Ohio State's going to have to hold Penn State to 17 points, to win that football game, 17, maybe 20 points to win that football game. So not only, I'm saying go win the football game on Saturday, Ohio State defense, but you're going to have to, in my opinion. I don't think 20 points for Ohio State gets it done. So Ohio State's going to have to go win that game defensively. So we'll see if they can. Maybe it's unfair to ask them to just, to do that. But that's the defense that we all thought we had at Ohio State at the beginning of the year. So go win a game on the road against an offense that, look, it's fine, but it's not a world beater offense. So
hell no.
So go win the game defensively. So it was good. It was a good performance against Nebraska, but I'm just at the point now with this entire program where I'm like, okay, we'll see what they do on Saturday. Everybody asks me this, how I feel about that. I was like, I don't know. Ask me after Saturday, because after Saturday, it's quite potentially, I don't even want to talk about Ohio State anymore. I know it's my job, but so.
Dylan, you're in a mood, buddy.
Yeah.
You're in a mood. And what I'm feeling from you is what I'm feeling from a lot of people as I sit here and talk every day. And then afterwards go on Twitter all the rest of the day. The mood of the fan base is very much going into this game, not what I typically feel heading into a Penn State game. It's usually jazzed up, excited, and we're all on one team. I've seen more Ohio State fans picking against the Buckeyes this week than I can recall since Georgia in 2022. Like that's the last time I saw so many Ohio State fans saying, unfortunately, I think we're going to lose this game. I'm kind of surprised by it. At the same time, you can understand why some people would feel like that. Obviously, I voiced my displeasure with a lot of things. I still think the Buckeyes are going to win 24-20, by the way. Book it. Do you think that there is – are we on the fritz here of really falling apart if they lose this game?
Team-wise?
All of it. Everything feels like it's teetering on this game.
Yeah. Well, that's the nature of being in this fan base and being around this program, is everything always feels like it's teetering on falling apart, right? Like it's being Ohio State fans, a high wire act year after year where, it just one push or, one this way or the wind picks up and you're tumbling down. So, but I feel like from a program perspective, look, it's been quite a while since this program has been in a place where, if whether you want to acknowledge it or not, if Ohio State loses on Saturday, we're staring a program in the face that looks entirely different in a couple months. And maybe it's not just Saturday's game, because I know that there's still, a path to the playoff, even if they lose the game on Saturday. But then that brings in the whole conversation about, is it good enough for this Ohio State team specifically, to just make the playoff, this expanded playoff? And then obviously what they do there matters as well. But, teetering, it kind of feels like that, because the program feels like it's teetering, not teetering on falling apart. As you mentioned, Ohio State, the most consistent program in college football history. Ohio State will rebound. I firmly believe that. Nobody has any reason not to believe that. But it feels like it's teetering on just drastically looking different for the first time in a while. And so in that case, I feel like it is kind of, hanging in the balance. I don't think that's unfair to say. Whether you believe Ohio State's going to go win on Saturday, whether you believe that everything's great, that's fine. But I don't think it's unfair to say that there's a lot, hanging in the balance right now with this program, and certainly by extension how the fan base reacts. That seems obvious to me, but maybe that's just because I don't feel as good about things as other people do.
One of the most consistent things that I hear is there is not much vocal leadership on this team, and this was brought up yesterday to Ryan Day, kind of in the words that Will Howard, Caleb Downs, Seth McLaughlin, three guys that are clearly have asserted kind of a leadership role, also three transfers, and that was kind of the question. Well, I'll play the. I think I got the
season and through the summer. There was a ton of talk about how this veteran team, the most veteran team you've had, lots of player-led stuff through the summer. As you've gotten into now November, at least outside looking in, it seems like a lot of the leadership is coming from Will, Caleb, Seth, guys that weren't here in the past. Is that accurate or a fair assessment? And if it isn't, can you give a little insight into which guys that are holdovers are actually leading this team?
Yeah, I think Cody Simon's been excellent. I thought he played one of his better games this past Saturday. I think, you really feel Jack when he's out there. He's strong. I mean, he loves the Buckeyes and just, drives everybody in practice. You feel and hear him a lot. Lathan, not having Lathan there, was, but I thought even on the sideline, Lathan was in it the whole time. So it was good to see him support his team. He's a vocal leader for us there. On offense, like you said, I think Will's really done a good job of that. I think, Mecca as a wide receiver, is a great leader. And I think Seth has really taken on the responsibility of the guys up front. But, when you go 1 for 10 on third down,
he refrained back to that 1 for 10 on third down. The
everything
answer
went back to him.
I mean, he is singularly focused on getting that fixed, which I like to hear because that was quite frustrating. But these seniors came back, man. I expected different from them. They're obviously they've not achieved anything in their careers that they've wanted to. 0 for everything when it comes to the main goals. And the fact that you got, and I felt like what he was getting at with that question, the fact that you got 3 guys who were transfers who were coming in here and all of a sudden they have taken the mantle of the vocal leadership on this team. It's a little bit, I don't know, man. It makes you question some things around there.
Well, one thing I would ask is where do these thoughts come from that those 3 guys are just the biggest leaders on the team? Like, is there a leadership count that I missed or whatnot? Like, or is it just when you see guys going rah rah like it during broadcast? I'm being honest here. I don't understand where that vibe comes from. And there could be obvious examples. People could point to me. I'm like, okay, but I've never come away saying like, man, the leadership on this team comes down to 3 people. Like I've never not looked at Cody Simon and said like that guy's leading this football team, Mecca Buka, Lathan Ransom, the guys that he talked about. So like, I don't know where that notion comes from, to be honest with you. So that doesn't resonate with me. I think those guys are as good a leaders as anybody on the team and have been leading. So I don't know the answer to that.
I think more specifically, it's about the lack of juice. When we look at Urban Meyer coach teams and you look at the leaders on those teams, they were big, bad ass, loudmouth dudes who would get in their teammates' faces. I played a clip the other day of JT, like JT Barrett, like like guys on those teams, and I'm not saying specifically Urban Meyer's teams. You can keep going back and back and back. It doesn't feel like one of those teams. It doesn't feel like there are any of those guys. You listen to Zach Boren this week going off. Players like Bobby Carpenter saying there's just a lot of introverts. I guess this is what I mean.
That's fair. That's a fair point. And I guess that, I totally agree with you. The notion there's a lot of introverts of guys who aren't going to be your rah-rah vocal leaders. If you go down the line of some of the biggest, I won't say biggest names, but I'll just go down the list of the guys who came back, who all elected to come back. And out of all those guys, there's maybe a couple guys that you'll ever, expect to hear, giving some fiery speech or getting in people's faces and things like that. So I guess from that standpoint, I get that. I think sometimes it's kind of a cop out to write off poor starts to games or lackluster performances in games you should otherwise be blowing people out as bad leadership. Sometimes like I don't think Ohio State went 1 of 10 on third down because they have bad leadership. I don't think that they went 1 of 10 on third down because they just weren't ready to play. I think that was just bad execution. And that sounds weird. Like, well, bad execution must mean you're not ready to play. Like, no. Will Howard missed a throw on that he has to make on one of the third downs, a short yardage throw. He didn't. It wasn't because he wasn't prepared. He just missed a throw. It happens. And I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not making excuses for going 1 of 10 on third down, but it just happens. It wasn't because of lack of leadership or anything like that. If he gets that and they extend the drive and they go score, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden Ohio State has great leadership and it's a roller coaster scale. Like, what they do on this drive, bad leadership. It's just, I think it's a cop out sometimes. But I do agree that it's a different kind of leadership. And do I think that it's the kind of leadership that this team needs right now? Maybe not. There are different types of leadership, and it certainly seems like they would benefit from more guys that are going to get in people's faces and tell them that this shit's unacceptable. I totally agree with that, but I just don't think there's a leadership void at Ohio State right now. I don't think that's, what you can write a lot of this stuff off to right now.
Everybody loves IGB. aggressive player, sometimes too aggressive.
Everybody doesn't
And-
love IGB, okay? And I'll be honest with you. I'm just going to say I don't love IGB. So, and I'm nothing about the person, but I don't enjoy watching IGB play cornerback for Ohio State because I feel like it's just. I talked about high wire act earlier. I feel like it's just a flag waiting to happen every time I see the ball coming his way. And so, go ahead.
Well, he's playing with mittens this week, buddy. So, like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, it's.
If you guys hadn't heard, they're putting mittens on IGB, so he cannot physically grab people's jerseys in practice. It's kind of ingrained in his head that you can't play like this anymore. That's wild. But more specifically, and I think kind of where that question was going was, why are we not seeing Jermaine Matthews, who, when you and I sat here in the preseason, both of us thought that it was pretty clear that Jermaine was going to be playing a substantial amount of time in a rotation with these guys. And I could see if Denzel and IGB were both playing at All-American status. They're not. They have not been. You had a freshman throwing at Denzel Burke last week. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what this was supposed to be. But Jermaine still not getting on the field much, man. I think it's weird, especially when IGB is like, I mean, they're resorting to putting gloves on him. I just think it's really strange. And he's voiced his displeasure publicly on Twitter. You got a transfer portal. Doesn't make much sense to me, bro.
No, I totally agree. And look, I've said this before, and I firmly believe it, and I agree with it as well. Like, you're not taking Denzel Burke off the field. I don't think they should take Denzel Burke off the field. I'm still a Denzel Burke believer. Has he played well lately? No. I obviously understand that, but you don't take Denzel Burke off the field. But for IGB to, I guess, clearly just be above and away in their eyes, better than Jermaine Matthews, to the point that, like, that's not a consideration either. It's just wild to me. That just seems, hard to believe, knowing what we know about Jermaine Matthews, A, and B, the fact that their IGB is the most handsy cornerback in college football. And it's not changing. I mean, that's not changing. They can put mittens on him. They can restrain his hands. They can go to the point of restraining his hands in practice to try to teach him that you can't manhandle receivers in coverage like this. But it's not going to change. Like, that's so far ingrained into the way he approaches the position. And I get it. Like, hey, it looks great on the plays that he doesn't draw a flag because, he's physical, and he lets people know about it after the fact. That's another thing too. Not only is he a flag waiting to happen in terms of the coverage, but he's also always a flag waiting to happen because he's a loose cannon. He's the first guy that's going to get to draw an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty.
Hold on, bro. He got spit on and didn't get a flag.
Yeah, I know. And that great restraint. I tell you, and it's not about the aggressive going after it. Well, the play will happen, the flag will happen, and we'll all say that's a chicken shit call from the officials. But it'll also be IGB going after a guy and taunting somebody, because he does it, and he's a fiery guy, and I respect that. And I'm not saying that IGB is a trash player. I'm not saying that at all. But it's a flag waiting to happen every time the ball goes in the air towards him. And with Jermaine Matthews sitting on the sideline right now, I have a hard time defending IGB still being the starting cornerback at Ohio State with Jermaine Matthews sitting on.
You're going that far?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess I don't know because we haven't seen Jermaine play enough. Like, we think Jermaine's a really good cornerback, and I feel strongly about that. And that could be totally wrong. Like, Jermaine played in that Penn State game, and it was, Penn State's offense was brutal in that game. Like, so, we think Jermaine's a really good cornerback, and he could go in there and we find out that maybe he's not quite what we thought he was yet. And he's still young yet. But I'm in the camp of saying I think Jermaine Matthews is at least at worst your second best corner on the team. And if he started over IGB on Saturday or moving forward, I wouldn't bat an eye at it because I'd be like, yeah, I think that's getting your best guys on the field. And that's the goal, right? So.
Yeah, I really like IGB in the run game. I think that is a great benefit. But no, Jermaine in coverage, I think he's probably the best, to be honest, just based on the limited action we've seen of him.
Yeah.
I also think that he matches the intensity that you lose with IGB. And look, I understand what you're saying about IGB is potentially being a loose cannon. He is a massive talker. Give me 11 of that attitude over 11 of a JT any day. Like, that's just my philosophy when it comes to football. I just want, especially this team. I want that energy from somebody. And I think he brings that. But yeah, it is getting a little ridiculous, man. The flags are just getting a little ridiculous.
He almost threw a guy into the Nebraska bench in coverage during that game in the first half at some point. Like he was the one that I know that drew a flag. He was blocking the guy essentially into the Nebraska bench. Like at what point does like he say like, damn man, like what am I doing? Like, it's one thing to be physical, but like, that was a mugging. Like he came back to his sideline with the wallet. Like that was a full on mugging of the guy. And like, I mean, it's one thing to be a little handsy, a little physical. That was just an ass kicking. Like, what are you doing, man? So, anyways,
it's a little puzzling sometimes. So since I started this show, I listened to every single one of these press conferences or little lightning rounds after practice from every player and every coach, even though at times it's incredibly boring.
yeah.
But I do it so that when somebody says to me something on the show like Austin Saraveld played well at tackle when everybody was sick, I can say, yes, he did. But when they asked him a week later about it, while he said he would do anything the team asked, he seemed very, very hesitant to do it. Did not feel to me like he was very comfortable at all with playing tackle. Just so I know that, right? I want to stay in the know. Now, every year you come into the season, you got major talking points. Every coach does that they want to permeate throughout the facility, that you hear everybody parrot over and over again. And if you were to tell me or ask me, Juck, what's the one thing? Pick one that they said over and over and over again from player to assistant to head coach. It was depth. The season is so incredibly long. We've got to play everybody. That's the one thing, number one above all else. You come out of the Oregon game, and we talked for an entire week about the defensive line being worn down, not even being able to get in their stances. The tempo was tiring them out, which, by the way, Ryan Day referenced in his answer here with Nebraska, that he was happy that they got lined up in time, right? That is amazing to hear from the head coach of a college football team that's in the top 5. Like, pat on the back, dude. That's like high school freshman football team talk. They got lined up on time. Anyway, we talked for an entire week about it. They had a meeting of the minds, right? Wednesday after the Oregon game, they said they were on the same page. So they go into the Nebraska game, and I'm assuming this is finally going to be addressed. Here's the numbers, the past 2 games, snap count on the defensive line. JT, 115, Jack, 124, Tyleek, 115, Ty Hamilton, 111. So those are your starters. They should have a lot more than your backups. But Caden Curry, 22, Kenyatta, 33, Mitchell Melton, 14. On the inside, they don't have as much talent, but I think we all believe that Caden McDonald is an impact player at this point. I've seen enough to say that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
22 snaps in the last 2 games. They're not spelling these guys at all on the inside. The big guys. I don't understand it, but you had some questions about it, and this is you asking Ryan Day about it first.
Job to make sure that happens.
Dylan Davis, where is that?
Sticking with the defense, over the last 2 games, there's been a sizable gap between your starting 4 snap count and the guys behind them. Are you comfortable with that, or is that just a matter of those guys need to be on the field, those are your dudes, and they need to play more, or how's that shaking out?
No, I mean, I definitely think we want to rotate guys, but when the game's on a line like that, we got to make sure that we're getting stops. We did that. We'll have to do that again this week. But yeah, I mean, we got to get K-Mac mixed in more, Hero mixed in more, Kenyatta, Caden Curry, and make sure that our guys are fresh in the fourth quarter.
2 things.
I've been joined by my dog, so if you hear weird noises, he's decided he wanted to join the show. So sorry about that.
So 2 things. One, he said you got to make sure you're getting stops when the game's on the line, right? So talking about leaving in his best players when the game's on the line and getting stops, which is the opposite of what he did last week when he was playing Zen the entire game,
right,
when the game was on the line, right?
Yeah.
You weren't getting your best guys in then. Anyway, then he says you got to get a bunch of guys mixed in more. And I guess my question to you is, after the Oregon game, when it was a clear issue, they had their meeting of the minds, you come into the Nebraska game, how are you coming out of the Nebraska game saying the same exact thing that you said going in, which is we got to get more guys in?
Well, I mean, if you add in what Jim Knowles said about this situation.
Well, here we go. Let's listen to what Jim Knowles said.
What kind of an emphasis was that over the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I'd say that was a big emphasis for us.
Jim, we hear so much about, keeping guys fresh along the defensive line and having that rotation. There's been a sizable gap the last 2 weeks in your top four and what's behind them. Thinking with a guy like Caden McDonald, are you comfortable with the snaps these guys are getting behind your top four?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with whatever Coach Johnson deems appropriate. He's around those guys all the time. He manages those guys, and he knows what he's doing.
All right. I don't know if I should play the follow-up to that first or we should hit on that first, but that is the soundbite that has flown around social media. Got a lot of people mad, man. I mean, a lot of people are mad. You had this meeting Wednesday after the Oregon game. Everybody's on the same page. Ryan Day probably said it 7 times. And you come out of this, you got Ryan Day saying they still need to play more depth. You got Jim Knowles saying he's confident in Larry doing whatever. And then you get the follow-up. You're the defensive coordinator. Shouldn't you kind of be in charge of the personnel that plays? And he answers this way.
When you're in those situations.
On the topic of what you were just asked about defensive line rotation, what is your role? What should your role be as the coordinator in making sure the guys that you want on the field are on the field? I understand you want to empower your position coaches, and they are around those guys the most, but should it come down to ultimately what the guys that you want on the field rather than any singular position coach?
No, I think it always has to be it always has to involve the full group, including the head coach. I mean, you have to operate as a team. You always want to defer to the position coach. There are other opinions, that people have, and we all work together on it, but it's got to be all together.
All right. So,
well, I mean, he's right. He's right that you always want to defer. Like, that's how it should be. Like, that's why you have a coaching staff. You should always want to defer to your position coaches. That's how it should be. But at some point, if you guys aren't on the same page consistently, then, maybe you have to take matters into your own hands. I just have a hard time believing they're on the same page. The same page. I don't know that I believe that at all. Like, it just seems wild to me. I know there's been talk about, those guys being, at odds for a little while now. But that particular comment just tells me like they can't be on the same page. Then there's just no way.
They're giving contradictory answers. They're absolutely not on the same page.
Right.
No. I mean, Ryan Day wanted more depth played. He said it after Oregon. You had a meeting. You come out. He's giving the same exact answer. I want more depth played. Knowles is saying he trusts Larry to do whatever he wants, but Larry's not playing the depth that Ryan said he wants. And then Knowles says whatever Larry decides is fine with him. And then also says it's a decision we all make together in the follow-up. Like, this is not on the same page. None of this is on the same page. And that all sounds very, very bad, which is why people went nuts. But it doesn't give me much confidence that they're going to get on the same page at this point.
I will say one thing about the snap counts the last 2 weeks, and Brian Day kind of alluded to this as well. It's not a coincidence that these snap counts there's been a big discrepancy in these snap counts. And also, these 2 games have been, high leverage moments for the entirety of the game, essentially. I understand there's an element. That's why I kind of phrased the question that I did to Ryan. I understand there's an element of like, you get your best guys need to be on the field. Tyleek and Ty Hamilton are their 2 best guys. I'm a huge Caden McDonald fan. And I think that it's criminal that he's not getting more, playing time. But obviously Tyleek and Ty are your 2 best guys. And for all these high leverage moments, especially in the second half of these last 2 games and the way those games went, I understand that having him on the field a lot. But it really goes back to the Oregon game and just to how ridiculous it was that it got to the point where that defensive line was so worn out in the second half when you had plenty of time in that middle section of the game to spread out those reps and keep those guys fresh, which again is the whole point, right? Keep them fresh for the fourth quarter. Like, Ryan Day loves talking about going and winning the game in the fourth quarter, and you're putting these guys in a bad spot. So I get that to some degree the discrepancy over these last 2 games in particular because they were close football games and you want your dudes on the field, when it's winning time. But still, the fact that these guys or worn out by the end of that, is because of a lack of playing time for these guys behind them, and specifically Caden McDonald and the two ends, Kenyatta and Caden Curry. So
I don't think they win at Penn State if they have a ratio like that. They've got to spell those guys, man.
Yeah.
They've got to spell them. I think it's one of the points of emphasis they need to make coming out of this, and it just doesn't feel like we're on the same page still. I just cannot believe that they're not. It seems so basic. It seems so easy to get this done the way the head coach wants it, but it's just not being done. I don't get it.
I think it's just flat out stubbornness by Larry Johnson, frankly, and then a willingness to just defer to him. The Larry Johnson conversation is a whole different conversation for another day. But it just seems like a flat out stubbornness from Larry Johnson. But he's been, he's been allowed to make those stubborn decisions. And then, good on Bill Andis for following it up and asking that question. But like, that's that answer says it all. Like that, he's empowered to make those decisions, and nobody's going to check him on it. We know that now based on Jim Knowles' answer, and that's why you're seeing that. And then
but that was confirmation of things everybody's been saying for a long time, right there. To me, anyway.
Sure, I agree. I totally agree.
All right. So one of the things that we talked about with this offense, and one of the main takeaways, I think, also from this preseason and kind of points of emphasis that they wanted to put out there, and you and I did a whole show about it, was running Will Howard, and that this is one of his strengths, and you're not taking advantage of the full Will Howard if you are not using his wheels in a certain capacity. And recently, it has seemed like we've just not, almost like they're scared to get him injured. It's the way it felt to me, kind of like old Ryan Day before he kind of made this change. And he said, and he was uneasy about it. He's like, I understand that I got to run the quarterback more. I got to. Then you had a couple plays against Nebraska where it looked like they were not live reads. And it was such a bad job that I just can't even imagine that Will Howard wasn't given the ball. I feel like it was a McCord. It was a dummy. It was not a live read. And I feel like Will's answer in the post-game press conference kind of deferred to that, maybe confirmed it a little bit. Chip was asked about this yesterday, about the lack of running Will. And his answer, he deferred to, he sounded like Ryan Day in years past, honestly. This is nothing like what he sounded before in the preseason.
They have an opportunity to be successful. $24 million to throw the football around. You don't want, when you have a quarterback, that's great. And then he has a gain of 20 and gets knocked out of the game. So now one of the best abilities of a quarterback is availability. So do you expose him? That's why besides Lamar Jackson, you don't see much run in the NFL, because you pay a guy $24 million to throw the football around. You don't want to have him running around and getting hit in the head and then knocked out of the game, because, it's a physical football game. So there's a fine balance of that. It's easy to say, we should just run the quarterback more. Okay, but what does that do, and what toll does that take on the quarterback? And if that happens, then is your quarterback knocked out of the game? And if that's the situation, then, what does that do? How does your offense change, or does it change or you go on to the next guy? So that's the dilemma I think that every football coach has when you have a quarterback that has the ability to run, is that how much do you want to run him and expose him to hits? Because that's part of what happens. Because when he drops back, he's going to get hit. I think there's a lot of shots that quarterbacks take that, it's a really, really tough position to play just because of the toll that it takes on your body. So you got to be conscious of that a little bit in terms of saying, hey, all right, let's just come out and say we're going to run the ball. We're going to run Will 25 times against Penn State. Well, all right, is he going to be available for the rest of the season? I don't know about that.
So of course he goes to the hyperbolic 25 times. Look, run him 25 times. This is just part of this guy's skill set, and he's not a great passer of the football. If you're not using his legs, then you went out in the transfer portal and you got a guy without the best arm, and you're not going to use one of the things that makes him a good quarterback. It's that offsets that his arm's not great, is that he has that ability. He's big, he's strong, he's got great wheels, deceptive speed. They take bad angles on him consistently because he's so fast, and they don't even understand it till they get out there with him. It's just a total different feel from him in that answer than we listened to all preseason, I guess is my irritation. There's so many things that they said heading into this season that they seemingly have gone back on. And this was part of Ryan Day's philosophical change that I mentioned in my intro to this show that comes up every morning that he said he was going to do. That he's not. The Chip is not. This sounds like old Ryan Day with CJ, with McCord. That's exactly what that sounded like to me right there. And I don't know how you win against Penn State, against Indiana, if you don't embrace that. You've got to embrace it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, we'll find out a lot more about where they're at with this on Saturday, because I feel like they'll formally have to have plays like that to win the football game if they can't run the football traditionally, and I don't think they're going to be able to with a whole lot of success. They're going to need that. I say that, though, and then, in the second half of a game that, was a one-score game, the entirety of that Nebraska game, they never reverted back to running him either. So, that gives me pause for concern to say, well, maybe it really, because I kind of default back to, I think it's there when they absolutely feel like they need to have it. And Saturday would be a moment where they absolutely need to have it, I think.
Yeah.
But also, again, like I said, last Saturday, it was a one-score game for the entirety of the second half, and the running game was just a titanic struggle. And at no point did they ever, say, hey, we got to get Will going in the run game here because we need something, anything to move the football, to extend drives, whatever the case may be. So that gives me pause for concern. But again, like so many things around this football program, I say, we'll see what happens on Saturday. We'll see what, and then, because I'm, before I make final judgments on it, it sucks. It sucks. You're right about the fact that he doesn't have an elite arm. I think he's been solid in the passing game. He's not going to go win the Davey O'Brien, as a pure passer. But that running ability, what he gives you, what they went out and got him for, what they talked about at every turn about needing a quarterback who could, be a factor in the run game. He gives you that. In addition to still having a, good arm. It might not be elite, but it's a good arm. And so those two things together is what you thought you were going to get. It just hasn't played out like that. Now, in fairness, up until the second half of the Oregon game, it really hadn't needed to play out like that. They've gotten away with it. And in that Oregon game, they were still throwing the football with good success. But specifically last week when nothing was going right for that offense, when they had nothing going for it, was really kind of the first true puzzling moment to me where it just wasn't an element in their offense at all. And it became apparent that it wasn't going to be for that particular game. And then now that leaves us here. See what happens on Saturday, because I firmly believe that they can't win that football game, without that being an element, because I just don't think they're going to have success in the traditional run game to the point that they can continue to stay away from it. So,
yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I guess it's just irritating to me when you say you're going to do it. I was so excited about it. You remember? I was so excited. Like, finally, we're going to get to see. When you're dealing with an offensive line who is struggling, this is literally their best friend. This is how you help them the most, is, picking up that one extra blocker, running the quarterback. And it just kind of helps everything click. If you're adding that in just here and there, nobody's talking about 20 carries a game. Get out of here with that, man.
That answer was bullshit for a lot of reasons. Specifically, talking about the 25 carries. Nobody's even talking about 15 carries a game. No. I do not want to see Will Howard carry the ball 15 times a game.
Nor do I.
See him run the ball 10 times a game. But, 7 or 8 solid, well-timed, called runs could go a long way with that offense. Look, for as much as it could be a factor, Ohio State's plethora of playmakers elsewhere, I don't want to see Will Howard with the ball in his hands, 15 times a game anyway. But 7 or 8 times when we can't even get that out of him. So that answer was bullshit in a lot of ways. Look, at the end of the day, you're right. Every time he drops back to pass, he's exposed to danger. He's in danger of taking that one bad hit where he gets driven into the ground and his shoulder dislocates or whatever the case may be. I don't want to hear this about putting him in harm's way and maybe not have him for the rest of the year. If you had that luxury, hey, if you were still an undefeated football team and you had that luxury, I can understand a little bit more. Right now, you're a loss away from, your season hanging in the balance here. So you don't have that luxury anymore. It's all hands on deck, whatever it takes to move the football. You're coming off a game in which you just ran the ball for 2.1 yards per carry and you were 1 of 10 on third down as a result. You don't have the luxury to say but if we did that, he would get him hurt. No, it's all hands on deck. It's whatever it takes to move the football. And if this is a team that, again, I think is going to struggle to move the ball on Saturday and we still don't see it, man, how do you justify that? You can't, but we'll find a way to.
The state of the offensive line with the just kind of the lack of competent bodies at tackle ready to play. something that those of us who follow the team really closely have seen coming for years, right? Like it's not hard to look and project out at the roster and say, okay, this particular year, you're going to have a real issue if you don't go address this. They weren't able to do it with top-notch recruits that would be ready to play in year 1 or year 2. They obviously weren't able to do it in the transfer portal the past couple of years. And a lot of people have been talking about Carter Smith recently. Carter Smith was a guy that we talked about in the summer, hit the transfer portal from Indiana, ended up going back to Indiana, but the Buckeyes were in conversations with him. This kid is now playing Big Ten caliber as an offensive tackle at Indiana. You could have had him. You didn't. That is just another glaring example of failure to address these issues that we all saw might be coming. And it's what we talked about heading into the season. You lose one of these tackles, you're screwed. We're here now. With that, the way the offensive line played with their first adversity yesterday, the discombobulated mess, I just don't know at this point. By the way, I talked to a recruit Monday. A recruit reached out to me and said, what did you think about the Nebraska game? About how the offensive line played. 2026 offensive line recruit. I was like, you're dealing with a lot of things. They did the best they could, whatever. Pacifying the guy, right?
Yeah.
He says to me, I just don't see the development there. It's a shame because I really want to go to school in Columbus. You can't have this, bro. I don't feel like that you can continue on this route with the current way this offensive line room is structured. With whatever they got going on with Justin Fry as the offensive line coach and Drevno helping him and the other guy kicking around there, like something's not right. You have to get more talent in here. And people forget that the transfer portal involves recruiting as well. So you are counting on the same guy failing in recruiting over and over again to land those guys out of the transfer portal. You have still, it's not just the most money. They're going for the guy who's going to take them to the next step. I don't know how you can go on, regardless of the results here, outside of a national championship with this current offensive line coach. And I feel like at this point, if Ryan Day does continue to employ him, it's just going to absolutely look like it's because he's his friend. Like it's not even, it's going to be bad for Ryan Day.
Yeah. Well, you think about where this offensive line's now, but I have bad news for Buckeye fans. If you want to start to project what the 2025 Ohio State offensive line looks like, oh, buddy, it is bad news. And obviously you never know what happens in the transfer portal, but you're absolutely right. The same guy who's with time and time again, on the recruiting trail, who's helped to create this problem that Ohio State's in, which this problem extends beyond Justin Fry before his time there. So don't get me wrong. This problem started before Justin Fry got there, but certainly he's a part of it now. That same guy, yeah, you're right, has to go, convince some guys in the transfer portal to come to Ohio State. So this problem, when you start looking ahead to next year and who's gone, who's back, the questions that they'll have, it's brutal. It's brutal. So, I don't want to say like, hey, fire the guy, but I would be stunned. I always say this, I keep on saying this, that I'd be stunned, but we should be stunned if he's back again next year, just knowing what we know about the state of that offensive line room. But I can't say that I would be stunned if he is, just from what I know. So
talking about this game against Penn State, who do you think has more pressure?
I think it's definitely Ohio State. I would never go as far to say as like that Penn State doesn't have pressure on it. Are you kidding me? They're a top 5 football team with everything to play for. James Franklin desperately needs this win for his own coaching resume and for the confidence of that fan base. You're at home. This is an Ohio State team, right for the pick. And how could you tell me that Penn State doesn't have an immense amount of pressure on them to go win this football game? And right. I still think it's Ohio State because of, well, I don't need to say anything that Ohio State fans don't already know about why this game is critical, whether it's the stakes of the football game, whether it's the fact that this team that, people talked about being maybe the most talented roster in Ohio State history, teetering on being, irrelevant. I don't want to say irrelevant, but teetering on being, an afterthought in the national championship picture. So many things, Ryan Day's future. So by extension, the program's future. So many things make this game. Not just for the stakes, but just I don't know how many more important games there's been in Ohio State history than what happens on Saturday for all the reasons that go into it. And I don't mean that like from like a stake standpoint or what's on the line, like, you know, going to any things, like just everything combined, everything that could change or everything that could be altered or everything that could be shifted with what happens in this game on Saturday. I don't know how many more important regular season games there have been in Ohio State history than what happens on Saturday. And for that reason, I don't know how you couldn't pick Ohio State. But again, that's not to say that there isn't immense pressure on James Franklin and Penn State, because there is. This is a win that program desperately needs as well. So yeah.
I'm with you in that this is that there's so much hanging in the balance. I feel like things could go drastically different based on the results of this game.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I'm feeling the juice that I want to for this damn game, man. I'm scared about it. I'll be honest. I'm nervous. I do think the Buckeyes are going to win this game. I am picking this to win the game. I don't get the feeling that's going to be your pick, Dylan.
No, I'll give you my pick. It was funny. You said 24-20, right?
Yeah.
I actually yesterday picked Penn State 23-20. So, and I think that's right in the sweet spot. Now, again, I won't be surprised at all if Ohio State wins that football game, nor will I be surprised if they look, you know, bad offensively and lose that football game. But I think that's the sweet spot right there. I feel like if somebody can score 23, 24 points, they're going to win the football game. So, I'll take Penn State to make the one or two more plays on offense to do it. So
the reason and I think we see the game playing out the same way, slightly low scoring, defensive struggle, maybe some sloppiness here or there on both sides. In the end, I'm going to go ahead and bet on who I think is the best quarterback to make that play. And I think that's Will Howard with all the juice he's got, which can hurt, can help. You never know. Some guys try to press too much when they really got that much animosity, like he clearly does. And I love that answer. Gosh, I love hearing that.
I do as well.
Yeah, but
I really believe that Ohio State's defense plays well. I really do. I firmly believe Ohio State's defense will come out and continue its nice bounce back up to the Oregon game. I think they'll play well. Again, we talked about earlier. I mentioned that Penn State's offense doesn't scare me a whole lot. So I firmly believe Ohio State's defense will come out and play well and give them every chance to take control of that game. And I think it'll just be a matter of, you know, your defense being on the field too much for an offense that just can't find its footing. So. So I'm buy on Ohio State's defense as being fine. I was never, you know, really selling it even after the Oregon game, but I'm continuing to buy Ohio State's defense being just fine. But I am selling on Ohio State's offense. So,
yeah, I'm with you. All right, my man. One more question before you go. You've been to Penn State for a lot of games. You've seen it during a whiteout, during a game where it wasn't expected to be very close when they were big time underdogs. You've seen big games during the day when they were, you know, it was a short line.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what is the difference to you between the home field advantage for a big game during the day and a big game whiteout game?
Well, speaking specifically to Beaver Stadium, it's everything. The difference in that walking in there and that atmosphere at day and then at night. 2 years ago it was a stripe out noon game, and the atmosphere was still great. Don't get me wrong, it was great, but I could put that atmosphere along 5 or 6 other atmospheres for a day game and say, like, you know, hey, it's a great atmosphere, man. It can get loud in here. It's one of those things where, you know, things start to go wrong. It can spiral quickly. It just seems like it does, and those kind of atmospheres. And then there's the night game where not just the noise level, for whatever reason, whether it's people drinking all day or whatever the case may be, I don't know. But the noise level is a real thing at night. It's just different. It just is. It's just louder. I've been in Beaver Stadium for all three. It's just different at night. It's just a louder place for whatever reason. And so I just feel like with the lights on and under the lights and it being at night and Penn State with that noise, and I just think things tend to spiral a lot easier than they would maybe during a noon game. I don't know. This is my feel. This could be absolutely completely baseless. I have no idea, but this is my feel. It just feels like that under the lights at night in Penn State, things that slips more slippery, and it could spiral faster than during a noon game where, you know, just kind of I don't want to say sleepy because it's not. It's still a good atmosphere, but it just feels like a regular old football game. And in regular old football games, I expect Ohio State eventually will figure it out because I just feel like they're always the most talented team on the field when they take the field. In night games, it just feels like, well, yeah, they might be the most talented team on the field, but they're not playing just a Penn State football team right now. They're playing an entire beast of an atmosphere, and it's not quite that same, for a noon game in Beaver Stadium. Still great, don't get me wrong, but it's not quite like that. So,
as a Buckeye fan, I am so jealous by the whiteout. I'm so jealous of the fact that it actually does feel like you're playing all of Penn State together when you go into a whiteout.
Yeah,
and that's cool as hell. And
it's criminal. It's criminal that we don't get that atmosphere. Obviously, I know what it means for Ohio State. Heck, I mean, when this schedule comes out and Penn State announced Illinois as their whiteout, and Ohio State fans almost universal reaction was, oh, thank goodness, that means that Ohio State, shouldn't be a night game, and rightfully so, because it's better for the Ohio State football team. But from a fan's perspective, for us, like, it's criminal for Penn State fans, it's criminal for all college football fans that we don't get to see Ohio State and Penn State in a whiteout in Happy Valley. Like, it's just criminal. The conversation for a different day. Big Noon. Fox has just ruined college football in so many ways. I hate it. And this is why we're playing this game at noon. I hate it from my perspective because, with the news that Trump's going to be there now, I'm going to have to get to Beaver Stadium at 7:00 in the morning. And people are going to be like, oh, poor you. Traffic around Beaver Stadium is just an absolute nightmare already.
It is?
Yeah. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, it's absolutely terrible. One of the worst I've ever been to or been around. It's bad. And now you add the whole circus of Donald Trump being there, and Secret Service everywhere. I'm gonna have to get down there at 6:30, 7:00, just to make sure that I can get to my lot, the parking lot, the media parking.
I never even thought of the logistical issues that causes for everybody else when you got a big president candidate coming in for something like that.
Oh, it's gonna be a shit show. So,
wow.
But if it was a noon or a midnight or night game, that's fine. Whatever. So be it. But I'm gonna have to get up there, and my hotel's because it's in State College and it's out in the middle of nowhere. And unless you want to pay $800 a night for a room in State College, you have to. Pretty much all of us. I don't say all of us, but a lot of us aren't staying right in State College. So I have an hour drive into State College from my hotel.
You got to stay an hour away.
Yeah. So even Altoona, a lot of people will stay in Altoona because it's right at the point where you head north into State College, and Altoona it's like 45 minutes away. But even Altoona, I mean, rooms are just insane they're just because there's so few options. So I'm staying it's actually an hour and 15 minutes away. So which is fine. I enjoy it. It's on a little golf resort. They have 2 different golf courses. So I'm not taking the golf clubs this year, but 2 years ago I did and played golf on Friday. So it's a nice place. I enjoy it. But I have an hour, 15-minute drive to State College, already having to get up, So I wish it was a night game for a lot of reasons. But Fox robbed us of that. So
Dylan, you got a question from Juckeye Terry. Thoughts on who plays safety?
Thoughts on who plays safety on Saturday? I think Lathan's going to play. I think Lathan's going to play. I was surprised by the way Ryan answered that question, and he seemed very confident to me that Lathan was going to play, and I think it's one of those things where it is all hands on deck. So if Lathan can play and they feel good about where he's at, certainly we know Lathan's going to want to play. I think he's going to play. So if you had to ask me if he didn't play or if somebody if he got hurt and they had to adjust on the fly, I thought Jordan Hancock played admirably in the position that he was in, and he certainly got a lot of praise from Ryan and Jim yesterday. So I think they would feel good about going right back to what they did last week and putting Jordan up there in their base looks, and having Jermaine in the game at that nickel corner, or Lorenzo played well as well. So I think
McLean, bro, the freshman, to see that.
Look, I am so high on Ohio. I just love where Ohio State's at with its secondary right now. Both, in terms of the future and in depth. Jermaine got on the field last year as a true freshman and showed immediately that he could play right away. Awesome. Jalen McLean just did the same thing this year. I feel great about Aaron Scott. I think Aaron Scott's a stud waiting to, a stud in the making. So I feel fantastic about the future of Ohio State's secondary room. I just love everything about it. I think they have some absolute dudes just waiting for an opportunity. Some shouldn't be waiting for an opportunity now, as we've talked about. But yeah, I just love where that secondary is right now. So yeah,
absolutely, brother. All right, my man. Have a fantastic time. Bring us home a win. Thanks so much for joining us. We will talk to you maybe in the post-game show, maybe Monday. Either way, we'll talk to you soon. Good luck, buddy.
Appreciate you, man. See ya.
Thanks, bro. Talk to you soon. All right. Our buddy Dylan Davis from the Delaware Gazette, and you can follow him on X at Dylan, Dillon, Davis 56. It is, I don't know, top 10 Ohio State account in the history of accounts. He's awesome. One of the good beat writers, one of the ones that is not afraid to ask direct questions, but doesn't have an agenda about anything. He just wants, to get to the bottom of things, to get straight answers. And I certainly respect that. There are, we got quite a few good ones on the Ohio State beat. Things have gotten better. There was a time there where it was not so hot, but things are pretty good right now. And I really like it. But a couple of and I was talking about this with Dylan. People like Sue, who is, I can't remember the last time I felt this pessimistic going into a game. I actually thought that with CJ, we'd beat Georgia. And that was to my comment that I have not felt so many people, Buckeye fans, choosing against Ohio State in a game prediction since that game. I got the Buckeyes with the 3-point win, like Rick Brick. I just feel like in the end, it's going to be a close game. And in the end, I'm betting on Will or the defense to absolutely nail down a big play that wins the game. Could the defense win this game? I think so. Dave says, Sue, last year I was close to 50-50 on Scum because of McCord. And, that game was essentially a 50-50 game last year. And McCord, he did it for you, Dave. Mika hopes that Chip and Ryan bring their offensive genius. And isn't it amazing, like, guys that are so smart that are, we talk about Chip being more than a guru. Like, there are so many offenses around college football that he's influenced over his time in the game. So many coaches that he's influenced. And then sometimes just head scratching stuff where it seems so simple, so basic. And you're like, how does a guy like this think that it's, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's like talking to one of those artists that just has that kind of brain. They're brilliant, but sometimes common sense slips by. Like running the ball twice as much in a game where you can't run the ball. Oh, here we go. Johnny making fun of my guy Dylan. Boo-hoo, you got to get up early to watch one of the biggest games of the year. Your life sucks. I do love it when people get on beat writers like this. Johnny, that's not it. Do you remember the Ohio State-Michigan State game? They were all talking about getting the tickets for the food in the press box, the free food that they get. They were getting tickets instead of a catered buffet, and they had to go get their hot dogs and even pay for their cup of cheese if they wanted cheese. It was on like every Buckeye show. Every one of these beat reporters was bitching about the free food they get to cover the game. It's good stuff, but when you live in a little bubble and those are all their colleagues, you got things you talk about at your work with your friends that everybody else would roll their eyes about too. No, I really like Dylan. I think Dylan is, I think he's one of the best, man. No nonsense. He's way more negative than I am today. He came in a little hot. Woody's thinks the victory over Penn State will be so much sweeter with all the doubters. Bucks win 31-27. There are most certainly a lot of doubters. I think that sometimes there's Buckeye fans that really take it personally when people pick against the team. Like I saw a guy on Twitter yesterday who I find to be very reasonable, said he was picking Penn State to win the game, and people were attacking him. Don't come back on this side when the Buckeyes win. It's like, hold on, man. This guy's not denouncing the team. He just said he thinks Penn State will win the game. Really funny. Really funny, man. College football fandom is something unique. What's up, Brad? How you doing, buddy? What's up, Anthony? Brandingo, how we doing, bro? Dave says, do we think Aller plays? I absolutely think he's playing. I think this is all a ruse. I think he's fine. I think he's more than fine. They're definitely preparing for both of these two. I don't think Perbola is his backup is that dynamic of an athlete. I don't know how much extra prep you got to do for this kid. I was just watching him against Wisconsin the other day. It's like, yeah, all right. He's quick, but he's not some dynamo. Disdain Rogue thinks that Dylan was being a little negative Nancy for sure. He's definitely in a mood, man. He's definitely in a mood. There was a time there where I didn't know how long we were going to make it today. Right off the rip. Delaware Dylan was a negative Nelly. Oh, Dylan's getting it. I'm glad you guys saw it the same way. All right, my friends. So obviously a massive, massive game. Tomorrow, we will go over the rest of the slate of college football for the weekend. And our picks, maybe we'll do that Friday. Either way, we're going to do it and place our bets over at, hey, it's Juck, and MyBookie is back with another offer for the Juckonbucks audience. Open up a new MyBookie account, and they're going to match whatever you put in 100%. Put in $100, they're going to make it $200. Put in $3, they're going to make it $6, all the way up to $1,000. If you're new to sports gambling, we do picks every Friday. We are +7 on the year for the Juckonbucks official picks, and we're going to keep it on rolling. So sign up for MyBookie. They're going to match your deposit. Use the promo code JUCK, and we're going to go through that every week, every Friday. Also, if you like online casinos, they're going to give you a $10 free chip for that as well. It's a great sports book. I've been using it for years. If you're new to gambling, I'm here every morning at 9:30. Put a question in the chat. I'll help you. I'm an experienced gambler, so to speak. The key is don't risk what you can't afford to lose, and you'll always have fun. Have some fun with me. Sign up, MyBookie, promo code JUCK. Get your free money. It's true. Not just an experienced gambler, a very, very winning gambler this year, as we are up 14 units on the year, 6 straight winning weeks. And that's just picking the best games of the week, right? Normally, these aren't games that I would bet on. I mean, I'd probably pick some of them, but we're making a pick on every single big game of the week. So it is weird to watch yourself in a commercial. I'll tell you that. There's definitely a learning curve at getting used to doing some of this stuff. And that is strange. That is really strange. And we are talking in the chat about Oregon and Michigan this week. Obviously, one of the biggest games of the week. For those of us who follow both Ohio State and Michigan closely, I'm one of those people. This one's massive. We got a lot of Duck Eyes in here as well. Is there a chance that they can give them a game? I think there is. I really do. And it could just be that, I don't know. I big game respect Michigan. I feel like I just have this certain amount of respect for that program and the fact that they can sometimes show up and surprise the crap out of me. Like last week, Michigan State should have won that game. They didn't. It pissed me off, but it is what it is. They seem to be able to, I don't know. I will not be picking the Ducks, and I don't even know what the line is yet. Who's got the line on that one? I won't be taking the Ducks. I don't care what it is. That's for sure. All right, guys. So tomorrow, going over the big games. We'll see what else we got going on. And some more Ohio State, Penn State. And I will talk to you guys then. Appreciate you all so much for joining me today. Please do like and subscribe. Appreciate it so much. And I appreciate you all. Have a great day. Juckonbucks out. Hey, it's Juck.
Juck? Who is Juck?
Juckonbucks.
Juckonbucks. Juckonbucks? Juck. Juckonbucks.
My guy Juck.
Juckonbucks.
My buddy Juck.
Juck is the Juck.
It's Juckonbucks.
Okay. Juck is junk.
The Juck Eyes.
Juck Eyes.
Juckonbucks.
Junk. Juck. Not junk. Juck.